time. The U.S. Northern Command says the troops will be mobilized for 60 days in Chicago. This started last night, according to the president's border czar, Tom Homan, on Fox News a moment ago. National Guard started working last night. Of course, they've been a few miles outside of the city, more like 50 miles in Elwood, as a matter of fact. Chicago Tribune reporting, and the New York Times, for that matter, troops, about 500 of them, spotted carrying riot shields at Elwood. A combination of 500 troops from Illinois and Texas. The question is, when we see them rolling down the streets of downtown Chicago, if that is going to happen. And it's where we start our conversation with our political panel today. Bloomberg Politics contributors Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis are with us. Jeannie is Democracy Visiting Fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. Rick, partner at Stone Court Capital, our Republican strategist. It does feel a little bit different this time, Rick. This is the third city, of course, following Washington, D.C., where we live, and Los Angeles. The mission here is a bit more broad, simply there to protect ICE activities, and ICE law enforcement is what we've heard from the administration. Are we going to see troops in downtown Chicago?
Sure. And this is not too dissimilar to the rationale they used when deploying troops in Los Angeles. They were there to protect federal assets, buildings, things like that. So they're keeping within sort of an interesting normality of bounds when it comes to what they're being told to do. But of course, I don't think you have to look very far to find a lot of criticisms as to whether or not this is anything that would be considered normal in its execution of law enforcement. There are lots of federal law enforcement agencies that could be brought to bear, as they were in the District of Columbia, to Chicago to assist them. And I don't think the governor or the mayor would be opposed to that. But the deployment of U.S. troops in domestic cities across America to do something they're not trained to do, which is law enforcement, is, I think, stressing a lot of people out, as well it should.
Maybe it's not a surprise, Jeannie, but city and state officials have not heard from the administration, have been largely kept in the dark on all of this. Mayor Brandon Johnson says they have not communicated with me. And you know what the president has to say about J.B. Pritzker. He talks about him just about every day, although there is one point I could mention on Truth Social. The president kind of reached out, writing Chicago mayor should be in jail for failing to protect ICE officers. Governor Pritzker also. Should these two men prepared to be arrested, Jeannie?
Yeah, I mean, we're so used of his comments and things he says, we sort of brush them off. I know I do. Nothing surprises us anymore. But the idea that the president of the United States is calling for the jailing of the mayor of one of the biggest and most important cities in the country and the governor of the same state, it's utterly astonishing. And both Johnson and Pritzker did respond. And noteworthy, Johnson said it's not the first time that Trump has tried to have a black man unjustly arrested. Of course, a reference to what Donald Trump did before he entered politics in New York City. So you have that kind of statement by the president, no communication. And then you have the National Guard in to protect the ICE troops, who are using things like Black Hawk helicopters to descend on 5-story buildings and pull people out, including children, in the middle of the night. And then are filmed saying things like, well, F those children. It is a horrific situation there. And it is not horrific because there is crime in Chicago, but that they need to be there for the crime. It is of their own making. And that is what Johnson, and that's what Pritzker, and that's quite frankly what the judge out in Portland said. You are untethered from reality if you think you need this kind of show of force to address peaceful protests that have been going on. You can go in and get illegal immigrants, members of gangs, without using militarized Black Hawk helicopters and people in masks to pull residents out of where they're living.
Yeah, well, the legal side of this is pretty compelling, and whatever might come next here could be interesting, Rick. The U.S. District Judge April Perry in Chicago had given the administration until tomorrow. There's a hearing on Thursday to rule on the state's request for a temporary restraining order, and that judge had kind of suggested the administration wait until Thursday to start rolling out the troops. Does this mobilization make the administration's case more difficult to make?
Sure. I mean, just by even moving these Texas troops to Elwood is putting pressure on the legal system to test their resolve on ruling against them. And of course, this won't stop at this district level. If the administration doesn't get what they want or the governor doesn't get what he wants, they're going to appeal this. So this first skirmish has been really a replica of other things that this administration has done, where they want to press the legal case. They want to challenge the courts to limit their power. They believe in the executive power and what it is able to do in these cases, and they're willing to take it to the courts to do that. So yes, they are executing a strategy to put a lot of pressure on the court to rule against them, at which point in time they'll pivot and do it all over again, until at which point it gets to the Supreme Court, where they've had pretty good support for the things that they've done in the past, almost winning every case. So I think this is all just part of a kind of policy, if you want to call it that. That may not be giving it enough priority, but this has been the policy of this administration. Any city in the country is going to be subject to this, for any kind of reasons. If there's a protest, if there's a governor that says something that Donald Trump doesn't like, if there's a sanctuary city that is pushing back on ICE agents, all these things could tip this kind of thing into other jurisdictions around the country.
Well, the courts are also going to decide the fate of James Comey. And I have to ask you about the former FBI director entering a not guilty plea to U.S. charges today in Alexandria, Virginia. Pretty remarkable, Jeannie. Charges that he lied to lawmakers and obstructed a congressional proceeding. His lawyer says that the charges will be dismissed, but we do have a trial set for January 5th. Will he get that far?
I don't know. I've heard some people in the legal community say that the trial on January 5th is sort of a place marker. We probably won't see it. And of course, if the charges are dismissed, we will not. But I think what is so stunning about both of these stories, both the Comey story and the raids going on and the nationalization of National Guards into other states, is the deadly silence on the part of members of the Republican Party. We have heard almost nothing from anybody in the Republican Party. As a judge, a Republican comes out and says, this is a violation of the 10th Amendment to send these troops in. That used to be Republicans who believed that. Nothing. And then on Comey, he is charged with lying, obstruction of justice. He has pleaded not guilty. They couldn't even get prosecutors in Virginia to prosecute the case. So they had to bring in 2 prosecutors from down south to take these charges on. And nothing from members of the Republican Party to say, wait a minute, this is not the way we do business in the United States, where justice, at least theoretically, Joe, should be blind and not subject to so much politicking. And that's obviously what we're seeing. The president himself has said that many times publicly.
No perp walk today for Mr. Comey in Virginia, though, Rick, many folks are looking at this as yet another precedent-setting moment, another through-the-looking-glass moment when you see the former FBI director hauled into court only days after the president went to Truth Social to urge his attorney general to make it happen. How are you feeling about this today?
Yeah, there's no question it's another sort of shattering glass of the judicial institutions of America. And look, I mean, everybody's got a right point here in the sense that I think the judge is going to look at this and say, is this malicious prosecution? Wow, Joe, just what you said. The president actually ordered it to be done a couple days before the term ran out on the violations. They then had to, as Jeannie said, scramble around because nobody in the Southern District who was charged with this prosecution was willing to take it to court. I mean, that tells you a lot about the legal system's pushback, and yet they were able to get a couple people from North Carolina to come up literally with a day's notice. So This judge will likely treat this badly. I can't imagine a scenario where this gets much of a hearing other than this is malicious prosecution and we aren't going to stand for that in the judicial system. Then the onus is on the Trump administration. How far do you want to go to try and really make a case here? Or was this just to embarrass Mr. Comey and accomplish that and so move on? There are others who are in a similar situation who are fighting prosecution. And I think there are a lot of people in Washington and elsewhere who worry about this kind of thing coming to their doorstep. And so it is a difficult environment right now.
What a time to be in politics. With the help of our great panel, Bloomberg Politics contributors Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis, thank you both for the insights. As always, stay with us on Balance of Power. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. This is Bloomberg.